What is that?
It's an adoption story from
Selected!
It's cool.
What? Can you take a 23-weeker? Like a baby? Yeah. I need a yes or no. I need to know right now. Birth mom is ready to sign right now.
So when you say like this is your only, you only have so much time for this, it's like it could be in some cases, in some instances, a real life or death like countdown.
Oh yeah. I can't tell you. We probably have 1 or 2 life or deaths a month. We just had one on Saturday, and we have 2 this afternoon.
Dana, I can't just say yes or no. Like, I have to talk to Scott about this. He's in the restaurant with the kids. We have to pray about it. So what, like 3 minutes? Yeah, Dana, 3 minutes. Click. Dana?
Hello, good people. Welcome back to the second episode of Selected, where we tell people's adoption stories and share the love that so many families have in their hearts. I'm excited to bring you the story today. The family that you're going to hear from is truly awesome. And after hearing their story, I find this renewed sense of hope for humankind. So without further ado, here's the story of Vaughn, Libby, Gus, Cozy, and Eve.
My name is Scott, and my wife Jenna and I have 6 children. One bio, Holly, she's 15. We have Vaughn, who's 12. Gus and Libby are both 8. And Clarity, her nickname is Cozy, you may hear me refer to her either way, is 3. And then we have Eve, who is 9 months.
I'm Jenna. I'm a mom of 6 kids. One of them right there. A long time ago, when Scott and I first got married, we thought we would adopt instead of having bio kids. But we got talked out of it. And we were told that the only way to adopt was through foster care or through international adoption. And international adoption was really expensive and foster care was scary. So instead we had one biological child and said, we're done. And we were very happy. And then fast forward 6 years, and I got a call on April Fool's Day from a good friend of mine, and she was hysterical, crying and very upset and kind of overly emotional about everything. And she said, Jenna, I just was at a class, and these women were talking, and this mom, she said that her sister was going to be having a baby and need to make an adoption plan, and I told them you take the baby, and I just know you're so mad at me. And I couldn't understand what she had said because I couldn't understand what she had said. And I said, whoa, let's just get you calmed down. It's so weird. I totally thought you said baby. I did say baby. And that was when I got her calmed down as fast as possible, assured her I wasn't mad at her, and hung up the phone and sat down on the floor and did some deep breathing exercises. So I walked downstairs to my husband's office. He has these big French doors. And I knocked on the door, and he looked up and saw me. He goes, oh. And he pulled out his earphones, and he stood up, and he came out, and he said, honey, what's wrong? And I said, let's go sit on the couches.
So Jenna gets off the phone and says, this is what happened. And I said, well, sure. And it sounds like I said it cavalier, And when Jenna tells the story, that's how she always makes it sound like, oh, Scott was he just always was confident all along. I just didn't. It hadn't sunk in. that was all that was. That wasn't me being very thoughtful about it. It was just me going, okay.
And he's like, okay. Wait, what? No, not okay. Did you hear what I said? I said a baby. And he's like, sure, why not? Like, no. Think about this, man. We're almost 7 years in the clear here. Like, we can't start over. And who are we? We can't adopt. Like, we can't do that. And his response was, well, why not?
And because I hadn't processed anything, and but that brought us into the world of adoption, because now all of a sudden there was this child out here, and that began this process of me trying to figure out, well, wait a second, what does adoption actually look like? I'd never actually really thought of it all the way through. I mean, I get the idea that when you adopt, eventually there's another kid in your family, but how do you get from point A to point B? I never thought about that. And so we started to go, well, what do you have to do? So I got on the internet, which is I don't recommend getting on the internet. It's kind of the same as like when you have a strange mole and you get on the internet. You don't want the internet to tell you what your medical condition is. You also don't want the internet to tell you how to adopt, because what you'll get are all of the horror stories and how everything could go bad. But the truth is that all we really figured out is, okay, I think we need a lawyer. So we had some friends who had adopted years ago, decades before. Their kids were all grown up. And I called and said, who was your lawyer? And so then I called that lawyer, and he was still doing it. He'd been a young man when he started, and now he's an old man, but he was still an adoption lawyer. And we started to realize that we needed to do things that I had never even thought about, and hearing words like home study and things like that. And so we started to get all of that in order. A home study is where a social worker comes out and they investigate your home and see if you are fit to parent another child. And so we started getting all of those things in order.
And everything was set up and good to go. So we talked to our oldest, Holly, and she was over the moon excited. And she started crying, and she said, I've been praying about this for so long. And both my husband and I were shocked. Whoa. What do you mean sweetheart, why didn't you talk to us? I did try and talk to you. You said no, and you said I could bring a friend on vacations, and so I just went over your head. And that is exactly what she had done. So she was thrilled, and we started telling everybody, hey, we're gonna have a baby. We were very excited, and I was nervous. I didn't really remember much about having a baby. We had passed into first grade, and kind of seemed like all that had been left behind. And then birth mom changed her mind, which is totally her right to do. And I'm glad we live in a country where birth moms can change their mind, because I wouldn't want to live someplace where somebody could just come and take my children away. So I'm glad she had that right. But when he was born, he couldn't breathe on his own, and he didn't survive. And that was a hard day for everybody. So we stopped talking about adoption. We stopped talking about adding anybody else to the family. We stopped making plans. We just pretended like it didn't happen. And then one day we were out on our family walk, and Holly was doing laps around Scott and I on her bike, and she rode past us, and she said, so we're still getting my baby brother though, right? And, oh, honey, don't you understand? Like, he's not here anymore. He's with God. He didn't make it. And she's like, oh, I know. Not that brother. I mean, my baby brother who's still gonna come. Aren't we gonna find him? And Scott and I said, would you even want to? I mean, you've been so hurt, and we're so hurt, and who would ever ask to go through that again? She said, Mama, this is sometimes just what you have to do. So we all prayed about it, and we decided that yes, someone was missing. But we also agreed that we weren't going to go hunting. that if we got another phone call, we'd just be ready. And Holly was completely unfazed. She said, well, if God can give you one phone call, he can give you 2 phone calls.
And so we kind of went back to this holding pattern that ended up being exactly what we needed, because down the road we got a call from some friends who were living in California. They were good friends of ours, and they had moved to California, and they were staying with some friends there. And this is how adoption stories work, by the way, where it's like a friend of a friend of a friend talk to their barber, and there's a baby. Like that's the nature of independent adoption in America. Is birth parents are out there, and they're wondering, what do we do? And there are adoptive couples out there who are looking to adopt, and they're wondering, what do we do? And there's this whole network of people that travel from the birth parents to the adoptive parents, and somehow they interconnect at the barber, and that's what happens. And so we had these friends that were in California, and they were staying with some other friends, and they knew of some people, and ultimately it came down to there was a birth mother that they knew of, and so they asked us, would you be interested? And we said yes. And the birth mother, I think we got some information together, our portfolio, which is, it's just kind of like a digital scrapbook that allows a birth parent to kind of look at your family, to get to know a little bit about them. And we sent that along, and then didn't hear anything.
Then one day in August, we had Scott's mother go to a party, and she ran into a friend of hers from kindergarten. She is a grandmother, so had been a while since she had been in kindergarten, and yet her and this friend recognized each other. Oh, how's your life? What have you been doing with yourself? Did you ever get married? Did you have kids? What type of life were you having? And so Scott's mom started to describe the family that she had, and she said, yeah, my oldest, actually, him and his wife, they have a little girl, and they are planning to adopt. And the woman said, really? Well, they must know about this special house. It's not very far away from where they live. In fact, it was 20 minutes away. And it's a house where birth mothers stay when they're making adoption plans. I'm sure they know all about that. So Scott's mom called us, and she said, oh, you must know all about this. And Scott said, I had no idea. I hadn't even heard of it. But I'll contact them, and thanks for letting us know. So that was on a Saturday, and he sent in our digital portfolio to this special house and sent in the email that he'd be calling on Monday. Well, the next afternoon, Sunday afternoon, people were over to our house after lunch, and we were all talking and laughing on the couch, and Scott got a text message from a sweet lady who her and her husband were friends of ours, and she had lived with us while he was serving in the military, fighting terrorists. And so they had been relocated since he had come stateside, and the Navy had accidentally overlooked getting them housing. So they were staying with another family in the military, and her friends had asked, oh, what have you been doing with yourself while your husband was away? And she said, I stayed with this family, and they had this adoption experience, and sadly it fell through, and they said, oh, well, we know people who they need to make an adoption plan. Maybe that's where they belong. So our friend texted this to us. Do you want a baby, yes or no? And Scott turned to me, showed me the text, and he said, some things you don't put in text messages.
The long and the short of it is that the birth mother that our friends in California found out about through a friend of a friend or friend kind of thing was staying at that house. So when I called that house and gave them our digital portfolio, she'd already seen it, and it's just like all these things come together, and you know it ain't luck. And that was Gus. And Gus actually got his name from the fact that everything happened in August. It was all within about a 3-week time period from the beginning of August and before the end of August that he birth mother chose us as an adoptive family. She ended up giving birth to a healthy baby boy, and he was in our arms. And believe it or not, Gus is our longest adoption, if I remember correctly, at 3 weeks. Everybody's story is different. What I've heard is that on average, once you choose to adopt, on average, it's less than the time of a pregnancy. Those are the stats that I've heard. For ours, it's been much less. It's very, very fast. But, everybody's experience is different. But then Gus came home, and now I had a son. And there's so many things that happen along the way with adoption that make you really kind of figure out what you're all about. And because there's a lot of hard things, there's awkward conversations, and there's times where you have questions about money and where's the money going to come from, and you have fears with the child. Will they bond with you? Will you love them like your biological child? I mean, everybody has different questions, but these are all normal questions that people have. And I can tell you as a father of six who has both biological and adoptive children, when they come home, those all go out the window. All those questions become the silliest thing because you realize you love them exactly like your bio kid. There's no difference. It's their story is different, but every kid's story is different. And your family is different, but everybody's family is different. And but we became a family of 4. And adoption for us worked out to be one of those things where we were kind of thrown into it. But then the more we learned about it, the more that we realized.
We can take a break if you need to.
I was going to say, we need to take a break here.
It's all good.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, that's full.
For sure.
Yeah, this is a very small enclosed space. So
Feel free to change your outside of the room even.
that would be great.
You can do whatever you want, but
I don't know, it's cold, guys.
it is pretty cool. That's true. Sorry about that. Yeah.
We had met a lot of people along the adoption journey who had helped us out and who had called us with other circumstances. And when we visited California a year and a half later, we made sure and, hey, this is Gus. This is the one that you helped talk to us about when we said, what do we do when we first meet the birth mother at the hospital room? Or what do we take a birth mother at a hospital room? Or how do we talk about this subject? Or how do we talk about visitation? Or how do we talk about legal issues, or how do we talk about, and they had been so wonderful and counseled us. And so when we met these people, Dana Carosa was one of them, and she is one of the directors of Sacred Selections. And so she looked at us and said, oh, you've adopted, in that way that says, I'll be calling you.
Okay, I have to be perfectly honest and break in here for a second and just say, at this point in the story, my palms started to get a little bit sweaty. Because if you've heard the first episode of Selected, then you heard our story, and we've only adopted one child, and Dana knows where we live.
And we kind of laughed because she's not going to call us. We're done.
If you meet Dana, you know that she is somebody who is always looking for ways to save kids. That's her whole heart and her whole life, and you can't have a conversation with her without realizing that children are people. And that was something that I think fundamentally began to change in me, is realizing that parenting isn't about me. It's not about me at all. And in fact, my life isn't about me. I started out with a certain view, which I think is normal, of how, as I grew up, I was going to do certain things in the world, and I was going to change the world in whatever corner I was going to do it. But it was really about my dreams and visions. And I can genuinely tell you at this point that I wonder now if really the only thing that is of any value that I do with my life is be a springboard for these kids to make a difference. Their life is a whole lot more important than mine. And if I can just get out of the way and let that happen. And Dana's the kind of person who will get you to see that sort of thing, that kids are people, and they're people who need support.
So we got home from that trip, and I was literally emptying the dryer from the laundry from that vacation, and Dana called. I said, hey, would you be interested in a 2-year-old? And we were like, oh, well, what can we do to help this 2-year-old? And we'll call her Miss Maryland because she lived in the state of Maryland, and she had a very sad story. And we were all set to go with Miss Maryland and to bring her home. And then lawyers kept going on vacation, so nothing could be finalized. And we couldn't fly out to meet her. And a month turned into 2 months, and 2 months turned into 3 months, and 3 months turned into 4 months. And we thought, what is happening to our little girl? And in the end, the family who they were making this decision on placement, they decided to go with a different family because they decided they wanted someone in the state of Maryland. And that's okay, because that meant she wasn't our daughter, and God's taking care of her. So once again, we still have Holly, and we still have Gus, and we're very happy with that circumstance. But we have all our paperwork in line. We have another home study done, an update, and we got an email. Scott got an email one morning as I was heading out to school, to take Holly to school. Gus was going with us. And Scott called me back in, and I'm like, we're kind of running late. And he's like, I kind of need to talk to you right now. And so, okay, kids, just wait right here. And so they were waiting at the back door. By now, Gus is 2. And I hustled upstairs, and he turned his computer around, and on the screen was an email. And the email essentially said, little girl, 2 years old, here's her particular ethnicity, need a home by the end of today, yes or no?
So now we're kind of like right back in it. Like I had in my mind said, okay, we're a family of 4, we're good. But then now you have to struggle with this question because it's not an academic question anymore. It's a phone call, and there's a real person whose life will be affected one way or the other by whatever you say. And so in the end, we ended up saying yes to this 2-year-old. That case didn't work out, but it worked out in the way that I think God intended, which was to get us mentally geared in to not being done. Eventually we ended up getting another call from Dana again of a 2-year-old girl in Florida. And I remember very clearly with that we got a call earlier in the day from Dana saying, hey, there's this 2-year-old girl in Florida, needs a home, and birth mother wants to make a plan, but we need to be pretty quick about this. Well, pretty quick about this could mean any number of things in the adoption world. Pretty quick sometimes is like 6 months. But in this case, we got the call that we went down to visit my folks, and I get a text message while I'm at my dad's saying birth mother signed. And I remember walking out to the garage to call back to make sure I understood what that meant, because I knew what I thought that meant, which is that this 2-year-old girl's birth mother just signed her rights so that we could become parents. And when that happens, it's go time. And if that's what that means, like I just went from a leisurely visit to see my folks to being shot out of a cannon. And I called back, and that was exactly what had happened. Birth mother had seen our portfolio, agreed, signed, lawyers had done everything, and we were on an airplane the very next morning. It was fast. I walked back into the house looking, I think, like just as stunned could be. Jenna said, "Are you okay?" And not thinking whatsoever about the context of the people around me. I'm just kind of shell-shocked. I said, birth mother sign, we're adopting again. And that was how my parents found out. Like it was just, I just wasn't ready for it.
And that was Libby. And that was on a Tuesday that Scott got the email. And by the next Tuesday, we were in Florida. Libby was sitting on her lap eating Italian food, as all good families eat. And she became a part of our family. So we had a 7-year-old and 2 2-year-olds all of a sudden. And that felt like drinking out of a fire hose. It was a lot at once. And Libby came home, and her and Gus both turned 3, and Holly turned 8. And exactly 1 year later, Scott got a Facebook message. What do you call it? Facebook? I'm not tech savvy.
Facebook Messenger.
A Facebook Messenger.
You really aren't tech savvy.
No, so bad. Everybody keeps calling Scott because I won't answer my phone or check my email. He got a message on Facebook about a boy who was about to turn 7, and he was in a rough situation in the foster system, and he needed a home right away. And so I was not there at home. I was at school with Holly and the 2 3-year-olds at that point. And so he wrote saying he'd be willing to have more information. And I came home, and Scott told me, hey, by the way, just so you know, I got this Facebook message today. And there's a 6-year-old boy. He's almost 7. He needs a home. I just told him I'd take more information. And I was a little exasperated. I'm like, you just made me pregnant with a 6-year-old? And he said, that's not how this works. And I said, that's exactly how this works. You know this. How many times do you have to adopt for you to know that this is how it works? And once I was done with my hysterics and calmed down and had a cup of coffee, I could breathe, and I read the rest of the email, and I agreed that yes, he definitely needed to respond to it, and yes, this boy definitely deserved a home, and yes, he would be an awesome fit for our family. And that is our son, Vaughn. And 2 weeks from the day that Scott got that message on Facebook, we were in Florida, and we got to meet him. And he had a bumpy start. And he is a really cool 12-year-old today. He is just an awesome kid. And then we were done. 2 girls, 2 boys. Whew, what more can you ask for out of people? We had adopted 3 times. We're finished. And then Gus turned 4. And Gus decided what he really wanted more than anything else in the whole wide world was a, quote, tiny baby sister, end quote. And so we tried to intervene. I said, hey, buddy, how about instead of praying for us, we pray for this family who's adopting, or this family who's pregnant, or this family who, they're adopting too, and an older kid, or this family, and, you start to get that little panicky bubble right at the bottom of your throat. And he very coolly told me in his little 4-year-old voice, Mama, I'll pray for all those families, but I'm still praying for my tiny baby sister. And so Scott and I decided God takes these things very seriously, and we got our paperwork in order so that just in case we had another message on Facebook or a text message or a phone call, that we would have our act together. And so we got a phone call very soon afterwards about a baby boy that was going to be born in Arizona, and we said yes. And then we waited for him to be born.
But this time, we had been through some things. We had been through some heartache. There have been several adoption cases that we had also gotten calls about that hadn't worked out. And one in particular that was very painful, where we'd driven all the way to Arizona. Jenna flew immediately to be there because when the child was born, we were told there's problems. Not medical problems, but there's something going on with the birth mom, and we're not sure, and you should just get down here. So Jenna flew immediately to Arizona, and then I packed the kids, and with a friend, we drove straight to Arizona. We got there, and as you can imagine, after that long drive to Arizona, without any major break, we're exhausted. You're emotionally already on the fringe. And we get there, and the birth mother had chosen a parent, had left the hospital with the baby, which was absolutely her right to do. But it still hurts, because in your mind, your expectation was that this child was meant to be a part of your family. And that wasn't the plan, but it was what you thought was the plan. And so you're going to now go home with empty arms. And that was a long drive home. So we were a bit heart sick and wounded by the time we got this call about what would eventually become our daughter, Clarity, or Cozy.
And as Gus put it, that's okay that Mr. Arizona wasn't my brother, because now my tiny baby sister can come home. And Mr. Arizona was born right after the 4th of July. And Miss Arizona, because that's where this baby was, she was supposed to be born at the end of August. And a week before she was supposed to be born, birth parents called and said that wasn't going to work for them, and they changed their mind. And that was hard. And we decided to have a sit down with all the kids, and we said, look, God gives us 3 answers in the Bible. He tells us yes, he tells us no, and he tells us not today. And maybe, just maybe, God's telling us we're done adopting. And if that is the case, we have to be okay with that, because God's in charge and he's not wrong. And he's not going to give us anything that's going to be bad for us. And most of the kids were sad, but could deal with it. But not Gus. Gus is our stoic, strong, fearless little Viking, and he lost it. And he's crying, and he choked out, Mama, no. My tiny baby sister is going to come home. God hasn't put us through all this for my tiny baby sister not to come home. And he's basically hysterical. So in a moment of desperation, we said, okay, buddy, okay, let's just take a breath. It's going to be all right. Come here. It's going to be okay. Let's just pray for Clarity, okay? And whatever God's answer is, we're just going to be fine with that, okay? And he took a big, long, snotty sniff and was like, pray for Clarity? And we said, yeah, buddy. And he goes, okay. And off he went. And Scott and I were utterly mystified. We're staring at each other like, I don't know what happened, but fist bump, right? Okay, we're amazing parents. Boom, handled that circumstance. If we'd only known. And early in October, we went out on a date, and we got a phone call from our friend Dana, who lives in California, and she said, I need a backup family. A backup family is a family who would step in case of adoption if the original adoptive family could not fulfill what they were hoping to do, which is make a full adoption. She said, I need a backup family. There is a family who is in place to adopt this little girl. She's in the NICU. She was born at 26 weeks, at 2 pounds. She's really sick. She's really, really sick. But I think if this family realized that other people would be willing to step in, they would have their bravery kind of like stanchioned up. Okay. So we prayed about it and we said, yeah, we'll be a backup family. It's okay. We're cool with that. And then at the end of October, I was cooking one night. Holly was gone with some friends. And I had decided to try a couple new desserts and a new dinner at the same time. So I've got like 3 things going on the stove, a timed bake in the oven. I'm watching everything really closely. I've got a candy thermometer out, and my phone rings, which we've already discussed. I don't answer my phone. But then I thought, oh, maybe it's Holly. So I rush over, I grab the phone, I put it up to my ear, I don't even look, and I'm stirring, watching the candy thermometer. I'm checking out my time bake because there's meringue in the oven, it's gonna burn. And a strange man's voice said, hi there, my name's Jerry. Do you know who I am? And all the hairs on the back of my neck stood up, and all the hairs on my arms stood up. And I turned off all the stove burners and the oven and ruined all the things I've been working on. And I stepped away from it and I said, I think I do. And he said, what's the weather outside like right now? And I said, well, it's completely dark. It's pouring. The rain is blowing really hard and it's bitterly cold. So the perfect evening in Washington State. And he said, how would you come to Florida and see what a real fall is like? How would you come pick up your daughter? And Scott, of course, was teaching a class. And Jerry's continuing to talk, and I hear nothing because my brain is shut off. And my face is messy crying, quietly as possible because I'm still on the phone and I have some dignity. And I go over to Scott's French doors and I start waving frantically. And he finally just says, oh, excuse me, stands up and leaves his class. And he comes out and he's like, what is it? What's wrong? And I just hold the phone up and he can hear Jerry's nice southern drawl. And Jerry's discussing flights and times. And so Scott just takes my phone. He's like, this is Scott. Can I help you? And he's like, sure, yeah. I was just talking to your wife about coming and getting your daughter. And Scott's eyes get really big. And my eyes are really big and messy and all the mascara. And he's like, okay. So they worked out the details. I asked Scott's class if they wanted to stay for dinner or not. They said no, have a great night. Hope everything's okay. And they left. And then we realized we had a fifth child. So we flew to Florida. Good friend flew with us because Scott and I had to stay in the NICU with our youngest so we could learn all of her cares because Dana wasn't kidding when she said she was really sick. Basically, all the things that go wrong when you are born at 26 weeks went wrong. And I will tell you today, she's a perfectly healthy, perfectly fine little 3-year-old. Little sassy, but I don't think it has to do with prematurity. I think that has mostly to do with being 3. And she is the most bright-eyed, twinkly little exclamation point of a person you will ever meet in your life.
I walked in, and they have you gown up and everything. We walked in this station area where they had her, and they have one of those kind of clear bassinet things. And I walked up, and I fell in love. I just, in fact, it's funny. I don't remember her looking sickly. I look at pictures now and I go, oh, she was really sick. It's like that was just scrubbed from my brain. She never looked sick to me. She was just beautiful. And we've been so blessed. All of those things that could have continued to go wrong have not. Her brain is fine. Her intestines are fine. She has great vision. She is spunky and sassy and tests my patience on a daily basis. And I wouldn't take it back. Not for a minute, but medical complications bring this whole other element of emotions in that you weren't. That was totally new to me, and so we stayed in the hospital there with her, and then eventually we came home, and we had a life of doctor's visits and surgeries and various things, and after all that was done, she's now 3, and Cozy is great. She's just doing really great, and the doctors just are amazed at how well she's been doing, and we know why. We've just been blessed.
That's Cozy. And Gus thinks the sun, moon, and stars rise and set on her because that is his tiny baby sister. The irony of everything is that when Mr. Arizona, everything had happened with him and there was such a disappointment, Cozy was already a month old. She just was in the hospital for that long. And God knew that she was waiting for us and that we were going to have to be ready to go in October. So he used Mr. Arizona for us to get all of our paperwork in order so that we would just be ready to go swoop her up. So then we had 5 kids, and 5 is a legitimate handful. And we said, boy, are we ever so done. But the kids are like, just one more, just one more. And I thought to myself, self, do not get hoodwinked on this time. We're done because I have a big birthday coming up and I'm feeling real old and I have 5 kids. And that's basically where everything kept cycling back to. So I said, how about this? How about we host a foreign exchange student? Yes, foreign exchange. Oh, yes. And all the heads were nodding. And I'm like, we could have them come for Christmas. It'll be amazing. We'll be able to help this older kid. They'll be learning English. It'll be so wonderful. Okay, heads nod all the way around. Success. We're done. In order to have a foreign exchange student come, you have to have some level of a home study completed. So our old social worker had retired, so we were on the hunt for a new social worker, and we constantly have people ask us, do you have a social worker? We're considering adoption. So we thought, let's just do a full home study, not just the tiny little one you have to sneak in order to do a foreign exchange student. That way we can recommend this social worker to all these people who want to adopt, and that's so amazing. So that's what we did. And she's super cool, super like funny, chill, kind of rad, and we loved her. She was great. And she said, so when do you want to adopt your next child? And I'm like, no, we're out of room. I mean, this house is full. And she goes, oh, no, I definitely approve you for more. You have that addition, and then you did this, and then you've done that. No, you'll be fine. Okay, but we're just having a foreign exchange student. That's all. I mean, it's Christmas, and I tried to get her head nodding, too, and she just kind of gave me a funny look. Whatever. She wrote the report. We were done. And then I had my birthday in February, and it was wonderful. It was snowing. We did all the fun things I wanted to do, and it was truly a magical day. And I was just starting to plan out what I was going to do with this whole next year of my life. You know, you have a big birthday and you make big decisions. And my birthday was on a Friday, and Saturday I was thinking about all this, and I decided what I really should do is work on me. And I don't mean that in the self-help, narcissistic, I just want to work on me sort of way. If you have 5 kids and are married, you don't work on you anymore. That's not how that works. Not in that way. Work on me as in, you know what, I could be a lot better mom to the 5 kids I've been blessed with. So I prayed for patience, because that's going to make me a lot better of a person. And on Sunday, I got a text message. In fact, I got a lot of text messages from our friend Dana in California. And my phone had been on silent for services because, hello, we're in worship. I'm not turning my phone on. And when I got out, everything said, call me. Like 17 missed text messages. Call me. And missed phone calls. And I'm like, oh, no. And I called Dana. And I get, hey, can you take a 23-weeker? What? Can you take a 23-weeker? Like a baby? Yeah. I need a yes or no. I need to know right now. Birth mom is ready to sign right now. Okay. What is birth mom looking for? She wants somebody who's in a family that has experience with a micropreemie. She wants someone successful experience with micropreemie. She wants somebody who is in a racially diverse family and somebody who has a home study ready right now. Can you do it, yes or no? Tina, I can't just say yes or no. Like, I have to talk to Scott about this. He's in the restaurant with the kids. We have to pray about it. So what, like 3 minutes? Yeah, Dana, 3 minutes. Click. Dana? Oh my goodness, I have 3 minutes. Now I have less than 3 minutes. Okay.
Eventually Jenna comes in and she goes, I need to talk to you. 23-weeker, 1 pound, 1 ounce. We have to say yes now.
Yes or no? And he's like, are there any other options? And I said, okay, I did ask Dana that question, and no.
And we prayed about it. I mean, right then and there, I could take you into the local taco time and show you a 1 foot by 1 foot section of where we prayed. And it wasn't a long, lengthy prayer. It was just, take care of this. I don't know. Give us wisdom. Whatever's going to be, let it be. And Jenna called back and said yes. And birth mother signed. Literally, it was yes, birth mother signed. 30 seconds. And thus began what I would say has probably been the hardest emotional adoption journey for us.
And so we get these calls, and it's usually when they've exhausted all resources and the state is going to come take that baby. There's a certain amount of time after a mother has a baby, if she has left the hospital and basically surrendered that baby to the hospital, that the child could be adopted, or within hours sometimes, and even minutes, the state is literally circling and ready to take the child. And oftentimes, we're the last call. We're not the first call. So the clock has already been ticking for 24 or 48 hours. And so then they give me a timeline. We need somebody here within 4 hours. And then by the time I try and contact, because not everybody is on their phone 24/7 to receive a text, a phone call, or an email, by the time I actually reach them, sometimes we're down to hours and minutes before I have to give an answer. And in the meantime, the hospitals and the doctors and the attorneys and agencies are texting me like every 2 minutes, now. And it's, it is a pressure cooker, because you're looking at a true life or death situation. And I'm calling the families like, please. So I've even been known to call friends that I knew of theirs saying, do you know where they are at? And one time it was on a Sunday, and a family that it was a very unusual circumstance where a child needed to be rescued from a situation. This wasn't a newborn in a hospital, and it was on a Sunday. And I called somebody who went to church with them, and they said, yeah, they go to such and such restaurant every Sunday after church with a bunch of Christians. And I called that restaurant because the family had not taken their phone to church, which I totally respect and understand. But by not bringing their phone to church, they weren't alerted to this situation. And they said, what do we need to do? And I said, you need to get to the airport right now and help this child who's coming on a plane. And because a family had just assumed that there would be help for them without any kind of verification or confirmation. And they left their food on their plate and took off because they said, when is the plane coming in? And I said, in 30 minutes. And they said, it takes us 45 minutes to get to the airport. I said, I know, if you would have had your phone with you.
So we call the kids down. Holly and Vaughn are grinning like the fools. Oh my goodness. They just look so happy and so smug and so googly-eyed. And the other three think they're in trouble. And so we very calmly and briefly explained that there was a baby sister waiting in Arizona, but she had been born at 23 weeks. And 23 weeks is really early. It's even earlier than Cozy was, by almost a month. And we explained that she was 1 pound and 1 ounce. And it's hard for kids to understand how much a pound and an ounce is. And since we're a Northwest family, we went and got a bag of coffee out of the pantry and said, this is a pound. And put a couple beans on it, and you'd have an ounce. And so they were like, wow, she's this big, huh? And I said, oh, no, she's 11 inches long. She's not even that big. But that's how much she weighs, essentially.
Now, all of a sudden, there's a child in Arizona who needs us and needs us to be there. But there's 5 other kids back in our home state who need us too. It's not like we can just go, see ya, because she's going to be in that hospital for probably about 4 months. I mean, and that's minimum. And in the end, Eve ended up being in the hospital 100 days, to the day, 100 days. And so we made a really hard decision. It was really hard for us. And we decided that we could either both go once every couple of weeks and spend a little bit of time and then come back. Or if only Jenna went, those airplane tickets could go twice as far, right? So there's just kind of like, there's just a financial side of it. And we looked at our finances, we looked at what we could handle, and we said, okay, if Jenna just goes, one of us can be there more often. And so that was our decision. And then people were so good to us. We had people buy plane tickets left and right. Jenna ended up going twice a week, every week. She would leave at 3 a.m. and she'd come home at 3 a.m. 2 times a week because people kept donating airline miles and buying plane tickets, and it was overwhelming. When we did eventually even come home with Eve, we flew first class because people felt like that she needed the space that first class provided, and so they, bought us first class tickets so that we could fly with her that way. And so all of that stuff that we were worried about that wouldn't work out, it did work out. And it always works out. That's the thing, is all of your fears, the fears that happen with adoption, those just all work out. And
if you hadn't picked up on it already, Eve's been recording with us the whole time. She's the cute little one you've been hearing in the background, the one with the incident from earlier.
And so Jenna was there, and I would go when I could. And Eve started out at 1 pound, 1 ounce, and she just kept fighting. And we didn't know with her. There was a very real possibility that we'd be talking about cremation. And, those conversations were had with doctors of, what would you want to do? And would you want a burial? Would you want a cremation? Those sorts of things. And those are not conversations anybody wants to have, but it just was the practical reality of it. She was so small. And so, she couldn't breathe on her own to start with. And, but she just was a fighter. She is a fighter. And now she's 9 months old and she's chubby, which I will never, ever, ever take for granted a chubby child ever again. There's just something really wonderful, big fat rolls on a kid, because she just wasn't. When we first met her, she's like a little broken bird. In fact, one of the nurses had me take a picture. She said, "You'll forget this," and I thought, I'll never forget this, and she was right. It kind of becomes surreal. She had me take my wedding ring off, and so that I would have some context to how small she was. And my wedding ring fit all the way up to her shoulder. And I still have that picture. So it's the number one picture that I show people to kind of give them an idea of how small she was. She had only 1 layer of skin and it would slough right off. She couldn't breathe on her own. When I first met her, I could count her heartbeats by looking at her because her skin was that translucent. I could just see her heart beating through her skin. Her eyes hadn't opened yet. Kind of like when you think of like baby kittens being born, it's the same thing. Her eyes weren't open yet, but she just kept fighting, and she kept getting better, and she gained weight. And at first we counted grams. She gained 10 grams, or she gained 6 grams, and it was so exciting. And then you started counting in ounces, and then you started counting in pounds, and she kept passing all the tests. And the irony of the whole thing was that she was born much smaller than Cozy was. Basically half the size Cozy was. But all of the things that Cozy faced, Eve didn't. All of those were potentials, but ultimately none of them happened. And so we just, and somehow I think part of it too is that because we'd seen what had happened with Cozy, with Eve, we were all the more grateful for it because I kind of knew what it could have been. So, but yeah, that's how we became a family of 8.
People ask us a lot, so are you done? And I used to say yes. Every time, oh yeah, we are so done. I said that after Holly. I said that after Gus. I said that after Libby. I said that after Vaughn. I said that after Cozy. And now I think I need to stop saying it, because every time I say it, God gives a little chuckle, pats me on the head and said, "That's adorable that you think you're in charge." And so I'm done saying it. And the truth of the matter is, if we got another phone call tomorrow and we were told, look, it's you or nobody, every child deserves a home. Every child deserves a family. Everybody deserves to grow up being loved. So yeah, I guess we are those people who have a lot of kids, and their kids have to share bedrooms. And I don't mind it a bit.
what you drive for this family of 8?
Oh, it's a 15-passenger van.
Sweet.
I was going to buy a 12-passenger van, but it was actually a better deal on a 15-passenger van that I found on Craigslist. And it's got these, like, really ridiculous, like, 90s stripes on it that I hate, but my kids love because they say it makes it go faster, so they don't... I'm not allowed to remove them. That was the first thing I was going to do when I bought the van, was to take the stripes off, but the kids were so upset with me, so the stripes stay.
It's kind of like a win-win, you know? You're helping kids and you get a sweet van.
Yeah, exactly. So... but I can actually pull like a giant trailer with the thing. I'm not sure I'd want to. It's just so long.